I grew up believing my family loved me in the best way they knew how. I believed their concern was genuine, their overprotection necessary, and their decisions always made for my own good. That's what they told me every day, and for a long time I accepted it without question. When you're a child born with a disability, mine affecting balance and movement, your world is shaped by the voices around you. And the only voices I heard were theirs. My childhood felt like living inside a bubble wrapped with cushions. My mother would hover over me as if a breeze might push me over. My father spoke to me in careful sentences, always reminding me to take it slow. My siblings treated me like a fragile glass ornament, pretty to look at, but never to be trusted with anything important. And the strange part was, it didn't feel like cruelty. It felt like love, at least at first. But as I grew older, I began noticing the invisible walls they kept building around me. I wasn't allowed to walk outside alone because a fall could change everything. I wasn't allowed to attend school trips because the teachers won't be able to handle you. They made decisions that should have been mine. What I wore, where I went, who I spoke to, how much I slept, even the books I read. Everything in my life needed their approval. They said I needed them. They said the world was too heavy for someone like me. On my 18th birthday, the first envelope arrived white, official, stamped with a government seal. I reached for it instinctively, but my mother moved quicker. "Oh, that's disability paperwork," she said lightly. "We'll handle it, you don't need to stress." She placed it somewhere safe, which was a place I was never allowed to see. The next month, another envelope came. This time, she didn't wait for me to reach for it. She snatched it from the mailbox before I even stepped outside. When I asked what it was, she smiled too quickly. "Just finances. Nothing for you to worry about. Finances." A word they never let me say out loud. I didn't understand then. I didn't know that those envelopes contained money meant to support my therapy, education, and independence. Money meant for me, but controlled entirely by them. Years passed the same way. My parents kept me home, insisting I wasn't ready to work or study. They spoke about my disability as if it defined every second of my existence. They convinced me that needing them was natural. That dependence was my destiny. Slowly, silently, I disappeared inside my own life. And I didn't realize how much had been taken from me, literally and emotionally, until the day Grandpa arrived and asked one simple question. But that part comes later. For now, I was still the invisible son who believed every lie they wrapped in love. Grandpa's arrival felt like a gust of wind entering a room that had been locked for years. He was the only person in my family who ever spoke to me like I was whole, not broken, not fragile, not something to tiptoe around. But my parents never liked when he visited. They said it disrupted the routine and stressed me out, even though I always felt lighter when he was near. That morning, when he stepped through the door after 4 long years, the tension in the house sharpened immediately. My mother's smile stretched too wide. My father kept checking his watch. My siblings acted as if everything was normal, but their eyes kept darting toward Dad for cues. Grandpa hugged me tightly, his arms strong and warm. "You've grown," he said, studying me as if he were trying to see past the version of me my family kept on display. Lunch was a forced celebration. My mother served dishes she never cooked unless guests came. My father kept trying to control the conversation, steering it away from anything remotely personal. But Grandpa wasn't fooled. He watched everyone carefully, quietly, almost suspiciously. Halfway through the meal, he turned to me casually and asked, "So, how have your disability payments been helping you? You getting proper therapy? Saving up for school, maybe?" I froze. Across the table, my mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father's jaw tightened. I swallowed hard and answered honestly, "I don't get any payments." The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Grandpa blinked, confusion flooding his face. "What do you mean you don't get them? You became eligible at 18. That was 10 years ago." My mother spoke too fast. "We manage them for him. You know how he gets overwhelmed by paperwork." Grandpa didn't look away from me. "Son, have you ever seen the money, or even one document with your name on it?" I shook my head slowly. "No, I never asked. They said it was complicated." That was when Grandpa's expression shifted from confusion to something darker, anger wrapped in heartbreak. He turned toward my parents. "Where is the money? Who has been handling it? Show me the paperwork." My father forced a laugh that didn't sound like a laugh at all. "Dad, you're overreacting. Everything is under control." My mother's voice trembled. "We take care of him. He doesn't understand how finances work. We've always done what's best." Grandpa slammed his palm against the table. "What's best, or what's easiest for you?" My siblings stared at their plates. I felt my heart pounding, heat crawling up my neck. All my life, I thought their control was love. But now, for the first time, doubt crept in. Cold and sharp. Grandpa leaned toward me, voice gentle. "Do you want to see your records?" I nodded. At that moment, the entire house seemed to shift. One question, simple, innocent, had cracked open, a truth buried for a decade. And none of us were ready for what would surface. The morning after Grandpa's question felt like the air itself was waiting for something to break. I barely slept. My parents paced the house like restless shadows. The tension wasn't spoken, but it screamed in every corner. Grandpa woke early, stood beside me, and said, "Today, we find out the truth." His voice wasn't angry. It was steady, as if he had already seen storms like this before. Together, we called the government disability office. My hands shook as I held the phone, and Grandpa placed his hand over mine to steady it. When the representative pulled up my file, her confusion was immediate. "According to our records," she said, "you've been receiving payments every month for 10 years. My chest tightened. "No," I whispered. "I haven't received anything, sir." She repeated gently. "The payments were deposited and withdrawn regularly. Someone has been accessing them." She promised to mail the statements immediately. When the envelope arrived later that week, Grandpa insisted we open it together at the dining table, right in front of my parents. My mother stood frozen near the counter, wringing her hands. My father pretended to scroll through his phone, though his fingers trembled. Grandpa laid each page out like evidence in a courtroom. 10 years, 120 payments. Every withdrawal signed not by me, but by my mother and father. I felt physically sick. They hadn't just taken a few checks. They had drained every dollar meant for my therapy, education, and independence. The notes on the statements revealed everything: money transferred into my father's failing business account, large withdrawals before family vacations, payments made toward my sister's university fees, even renovations to the house I was barely allowed to leave. It wasn't just theft, it was betrayal built over a decade. I looked up at my parents, searching for remorse, but my mother burst into tears instead. "We did what we had to," she cried. "You didn't need that money. We used it for the family. For your family," Grandpa corrected sharply. "Not for him." My father's face hardened. "Don't start judging us. We fed him, clothed him. He owes us. Owes them." The word stabbed deeper than anything else. My entire life I had been treated like a burden, and now they were admitting they saw me exactly that way. Grandpa rose from his chair, towering with fury. "You stole his future. You kept him trapped so you could take what belonged to him." My mother's crying turned into anger. "You're filling his head with nonsense. He can't live on his own. We were protecting him, protecting me." That life finally shattered. For the first time in my life, I saw my parents clearly not as caretakers, but as people who used my disability as a shield to hide their greed. When Grandpa placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and said, "Pack your bags, son," I didn't hesitate. That day, I walked out of the house with nothing but a small suitcase, a decade of stolen years, and the realization that the people I trusted most were the ones who kept me small. But the truth was out now, and for the first time, I was free to rise. Revenge didn't come in flames or screaming or dramatic confrontations. It came in quiet moments, the kind that change a life forever. Moving in with Grandpa was like taking my first real breath. His home felt different from the one I had grown up in. There were no whispered reminders that I was fragile, no eyes watching me with suspicion, no one hovering over me, waiting for me to break. Instead, Grandpa encouraged me from the first morning. "You're stronger than they ever allowed you to be," he said, handing me a cup of tea. "Let's start building your life now." And we did. The first step was therapy, real therapy. Not the minimal sessions my parents claimed were too expensive for me. I met a specialist who looked at me with respect, not pity. She told me I had far more potential than I'd been led to believe. Every week, my balance improved, my confidence grew, and my voice, quiet for so many years, began to return. Then came education. I enrolled in community college, choosing classes that scared me and excited me at the same time. Walking onto campus felt like stepping onto a new planet, but Grandpa's words followed me everywhere. If you fall, you'll stand again. That's what matters. I found a part-time job next. My first paycheck made me cry, not because of the amount, but because it was mine. Earned by me, not stolen, not controlled. Meanwhile, the investigation into my parents continued. The authorities froze the accounts. My parents were questioned repeatedly. Neighbors whispered. Friends kept their distance. Some relatives called Grandpa, begging him to drop everything for the sake of family reputation. But Grandpa never wavered. They took his money, he would say, but worse, they took his independence. Eventually, my parents faced real consequences, financial penalties, legal scrutiny, and the slow crumbling of the image they had built for themselves. Watching them fall apart wasn't satisfying in the way I thought it would be. It didn't heal me. It didn't undo the years of manipulation. But it did something else. It freed me. The real revenge was not their punishment. It was my progress. As I grew stronger, more capable, more independent, I realized they had kept me small because they were afraid of exactly this version of me. A version they couldn't control, a version who knew his worth. Years later, I stood in my own apartment, small, quiet, and perfect. I held a letter in my hands sent by my mother. Come home, we miss you, home, a word that no longer belonged to them. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened, where things that no longer mattered quietly rested. That night I wrote a letter too, not to them, but to the boy I once was. You were never a burden. You were never helpless. They feared your strength, but look at you now. You rose. And that, more than anything, was the sweetest revenge I could ever have asked for.